اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Like I mentioned last night, we will begin with the first few minutes discussing jurisprudential issues. And tonight, due to the controversy, depends on how you want to pronounce it, and as one brother called it, the fiasco that took place last night and all day today, I find it is imperative that we discuss the issue of knowing when the first day of Shahr Ramadan al-Mubarak is. See, if you're looking at a problem, to find the problem, it's always the easiest thing first. You know, you want to start your car, you turn the key, you see reds, and there's no kick. First thing you look for is a kill switch or something simple that could be there. And if it's not there, then you work from that position onwards. We don't go as far as we can to some conclusion. I can't just turn around and say, listen, there's no spark in my spark plug. I go right to the end. No, let's start from the very beginning, working it towards from one part to another part of the system in order for us to eliminate what the problem can be. If we begin with determining what the first day of the month, I need to take a look at what the ulama say. And this is one of the biggest problems people do. They don't. People look at what WhatsApp says. WhatsApp's become the biggest marja for people, or Facebook, or whatever platform is being used now, whatever social media platform is being used. To the point that someone will come up and ask, you know, I've seen this, and to let you know, I've seen a fatwa for Sayyid Sistani, I don't know if it's true or not, that says kangaroo meat's halal, and I've seen one that says kangaroo meat is haram. That should be enough to light up all the lights around you that something's not right when it comes to me taking stuff from social media. So what's happened here is when we are to obtain even an istifta from the marja, of the conditions is one, you either get it from the marja or I get it from the authentic book of the marja. Not any book, not a website, an authentic book, a book that's been authenticated. It is a correct book. And that is enough for me. That suffices for me. Now, there are other conditions that are required there, but none of them are social media. Likewise has come with us finding out whether today was the first of Ramadan or not. First way for me to determine if today is the first of Ramadan, the night before, because that's when the moon would be visible, on the night before as the sun sets. I witnessed the moon myself. If I witnessed the moon myself, that's it. Upon me, it is the first of Ramadan. Me and who else? Me and me alone. I don't have to announce to the people to force them to follow me, because if they don't fast, that I've become a liar. No. It's upon me to fast and nobody else. The other reasons that exist is if it becomes common knowledge. And this is what in the 30 years I remember in my life, what I've realized is when the moon gets spotted, everyone has seen it. I get a message from someone here, someone from another center, and then they start to grow exponentially. All of a sudden I get the odd message from Sayyid Fadil in Wollongong and everyone else around there. So everyone's seen the moon. There's not a single individual that hasn't messaged me yet and said, we've seen the moon. So if it becomes common knowledge, then it is the first. Another way to determine is if 30 days of Sha'ban have expired. Has to be one of these, not all of them, because sometimes the month can be 29 days. Finally, and this is the biggest problem, is I need 2 just eyewitnesses. Now, if you take a look at this, a lot of the masail always mention just eyewitnesses. Not just eyewitnesses, just. If I want to eat dhabh from someone kills, of the conditions is they have to be a Muslim. They don't have to be just. They just have to be a Muslim. The one that kills has to be a Muslim. But for sighting the moon, it has to be a just person. What does a just person mean? If you look into the Adil, if you look into the English translation of the book, it says a person of impeccable character. That still doesn't explain it. A just person is someone that prays, that fasts, that pays his khums, that does amr bil ma'ruf, nahy anil munkar, does the wajibat, and abstains from the muharramat. A just person doesn't lie, a just person doesn't steal, a just person doesn't fornicate, a just person doesn't commit the sins. This is who a just person is. So generally, the majority of you here are just persons, if not all of you. You know what I mean? And when I say the majority, I'm not including myself. So I look at you guys far ahead of me in this manner. Not anyone else, wal'iyadhu billah. So anyway, I need not one of these, but I need 2. And both of them have to see it the same. It's like when I have to determine, has this carpet become najis? If I want to determine if this carpet's become najis, and I ask just person number 1, and he says, well, someone bled here. And then I ask just person number 2, and he says, well, someone urinated there. Okay, can I say that it's najis? No, because both of them have given you a different reason, even though they're both just. These are the rules. Say you're praying, someone says to you that you did 3 sujuds while you were praying, or 4 sujuds. Can I accept it and this person's just? No. If 2 just people tell me, listen, you prayed and you did 4 sajdas in the rak'ah, I accept it. So this is the other thing that you need to look at. You need certainty. In fact, you need to be satisfied with it having taken place. Finally, you need to understand Allah does not judge you on what's unclear to you. So don't think and say, oh my God, shock, horror, it's the end of the world, I need to know. It's unclear. If you look at the Maraja, what do they say? If it's unclear, if you're doubtful, what do they say? They say, fulfill the month. 30 days Sha'ban, you're safe. So if you decided not to fast today, and it turns out to be Ramadan, all you have to do is the qada of today. If you decided to fast today and your niyyah was qada or mustahab, and it turns out to be Shahr Ramadan, you get Shahr Ramadan. That's how it's ticked off in this way. You don't need to be the first to announce it. This is the biggest problem. And you see this with many people. They want to announce that today is the first of Ramadan. They want to be first. You know, it's sometimes a bit like the mentality of the journalists. The journalists have a mentality where they like to say, I'd rather be first and wrong than be second and right. I want to be noticed. Ya alam shufuni. You know, I'm here. I want to be noticed that I was the first person to tell everyone it was Ramadan. And it's a gamble. They roll the dice. If it hits, it hits. Because what did I do for the last 24 hours? All I was doing was contacting the people that saw them. If you spoke to the people that I spoke to, good luck to you. Each one I spoke to saw the moon on their own. Out of the 5, 3 of them, I'll tell you, and this is very important because this happened to be a big incident. The first person I spoke to, they said it was from the Islamic Shia Centre of Queensland. This is the first one that came. I called someone I know from the board members, and this is live. It's on everyone's going to hear this, so I'm accountable for this. And it's live on the Day of Judgment. So I called him and I asked him. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. Did someone sight the moon? Then I could hear him talking to the president there. And the president said, I think someone said that some Sunni guy he met saw the moon. How many thinks are in there? And someone's, that's enough for you to, what? Turn away. So I didn't stop there. I went to the other ones. The other ones, one of the brothers I spoke to said, a brother that he knows and he trusts. And I accept that, you know, he trusts. I'm not saying, I don't know this. It doesn't mean I have to give them my seal of approval, me as in me and you. We don't have to give them our seal of approval for them to be trustworthy. We accept that he's trustworthy. So he said, this brother of mine was in Bathurst, a friend of mine, and he saw the moon. I said, who was with him? He said he was on his own. So we're stuck here again. Then two brothers, and these were real brothers, not only Islamic brothers, but they were actual brothers, saw it in Canberra. I spoke to both brothers mu'minin. Both of them said to me that they were alone. The first one said, when I say alone, the first one was really alone. There was no one with him except him and God. And he saw the moon. The second one said to me, and I spoke to them personally, you know, I'm not the first one, two I mentioned were through proxies, with the actual people there, but these are the actual people. He said that he saw the moon, but no one was with him. Then his brother, when I spoke to him, said, I saw the moon, and there were 9 Turkish brothers there. This is what he said. I said, did you know these Turkish brothers? He said, I've never met them before. But I think he took their phone. Now, I'm unsure of that point. But he said that he saw it. So you notice there's all these, it's a bit like circumstantial evidence. You can't build a case with it. And this is what causes what? Doubt. When I have doubt, what do? I assume it's not Ramadan. It's not the beginning of Shahr Ramadan. And this is what you would find with the representatives of the Maraja in this country. That they said, and I also spoke to Sayyid Hisham Nasrallah, and he said 30th of Sha'ban. And if you go and you meet Sayyid Sistani in Najaf, those that of us, the first person he asks about is who? Sayyid Hisham. That's his representative is. And so if his representative says it's the 30th of Sha'ban, I think you've sealed the deal there. We don't need to go any further and find out what every other person's perspective is. Or, you know, the voice message where someone spoke to someone in Najaf, like, was this guy here when he spoke to the people? We don't need to go this far, but it's very important. This is why I've spoken a bit about this point. It's very important. Plain and simple. If 100 people go out to spot the moon, 2 come back, said they saw it, 98 said they didn't, I wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket. You know what I mean? I'd hold back and stand in that doubtful position. Okay, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, our discussion for this month has to do with the Quran. The Quran, I mentioned last night, has many things within it. But of the things within the Quran are historical accounts. Historical lessons that exist. What is the purpose and what is the reason behind these stories and the reasons behind these lessons? What is the purpose of writing these lessons? You'll find generally stories are there to give you a clearer example of what happens when certain things take place. You know, sometimes you might advise someone, you might see someone fighting in front of their children, and you say, listen, don't fight. When I say a spouse, a husband and a wife, fighting in front of their children, and he said, don't fight in front of your kids because it will affect them psychologically. Now, from this example, I'm only advising a person. But if this person was to actually witness what takes place and how a kid grows up from living in a house where people fight, it's like if your father has a lead foot when he drives. Everyone in the family has a lead foot when they drive. You know, you see them, they're zipping away because it's normal. Because they've been living in this car that for some reason is racing everybody. So they decide, I need to race everybody. It becomes subconscious. So this is what exists. So when I am living the example is better than when someone actually informs me of this. And teaching from a book directly is boring. Sometimes it's monotonous. You know, when you had those teachers that they'd open the textbook and they would say, and in 1870, the Civil War, and you'd say, oh my God, what's this guy? I don't want you to read, you know, show us things, explain things, give us examples. This is what I want to see. I don't want to have a boring lesson. And that's another thing with stories. They give you a more enjoyable and a different experience as well. Now, a lot of people ask, what do you gain from these gatherings and what do we gain from these congregations? Apart from the fact that we lament over, usually Muharram, we lament over the tragedies of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam, and throughout the year, inshallah, in Layl al-Qadr, we will commemorate the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And in this, we empathize with the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and those that were afflicted with this. But there's also, when they say the word abra, there was also a lesson to be learnt from this. And all these stories have a lesson that we can learn. See, we can sit there and act towards things in a way where, if you look at the dream time, and you know all these pagan stories of how the Milky Way came and how this star constellation came about. You know, a bit like in The Lion King where Timon's telling Pumbaa what the stars really are. You know, and you could sit there and talk about something that makes absolutely no sense and try and be someone that is understanding, or you could give them a real story. Because a real story has real meaning. A lot of people used to use storytelling to explain to people. But with the Quran, it isn't in this manner where we are telling people stories that are not true. You know, this is what the people used to refer to when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, you'll find that in the Quran, it mentions this verse a lot, mentions this point. It says, Asatir al-awwaleen. Asatir al-awwaleen means when you're talking about myths and legends. You know, this is like the legends of yore. You know, the stories of old. This person, all he's doing is saying these old tales. And even now, when they try to disprove religion, they will say, oh, the story of Jesus was told before about some deity, and the story of Moses was told before. And if you know, a lot of these people that say this stuff, you research it, it's all unfounded. There's no evidence. They just say this, and if a lie is said enough, it becomes true. You explain a lie many times, it becomes the truth, and people accept it. You know, even amongst us, amongst the Muslims around us, you'll hear stories and people will regurgitate the story 1,000,000 times and it becomes the truth. And it becomes something people live by. And some people will actually believe and in the end follow. But the Quran doesn't give false parables. The Quran does not give false stories. It doesn't have these asatir al-awwaleen. And this is even an accusation today. The Quran is an exhortation so I can experience from others, so I can take heed rather than fall down and regret. Even if you take a look within the Quran, you will find people warn others. In the case of Fir'aun, when Musa alayhi salam comes and warns them, when they decide, when Fir'aun wants to kill Musa, up rises one in the Quran they mention, a mu'min from the family of Fir'aun, a believer from the family of Fir'aun that is doing taqiyya, he is concealing his faith. What does he say? He warns them of what? He says, I warn you of who? He says, of the people, he mentions in the verse, he says, مثل يوم الأحزاب. When he says al-ahzab, when you hear the word hizb, or ahzab means parties. He says, I warn you of their days. It's not only one day, each one of these parties and what happens. And then he says, مثل دأب قوم نوح وعاد وثمود والذين من بعدهم. So obviously they know the stories of who? Da'b. When he's talking about the custom and the tradition and when you say the usual ways of these people, the ones of Ad, Thamud, and the people of Nuh, when they came and they rejected the signs and the wrath of God came upon them. And this is what happens here. What happens in the situation, as we find here in the Quran, is even in the Quran you will see people remind of these stories so people don't fall apart. These stories are not written, I mentioned, by Hans Christian Andersen, Brothers Grimm or Aesop's. These are real stories that took place. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jal, when He begins the surah of Yusuf, على نبينا وآله وعليه أفضل الصلاة والسلام, Allah Azza wa Jal says, نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. That Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in this book that He gives the best of stories. Not only is these stories the best of stories and are repeated, even movies get made about these stories, but these stories are real stories. And that's why they are best. They have real meanings in life. And this is why over this month I'll be looking at these stories. Even from the tale of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. If you take a look, these nuances that in there, these subtleties that exist inside the story. For example, if you take a look at Yusuf, he is born, then his brother Benjamin is born, and the mother dies at the birth of Benjamin, and Yusuf is orphaned. And Nabi Yaqub treats him differently. Why? Because he's an orphan. An orphan gets treated better. But then God gives you this parable, because parents have this bad habit of doing what? Tamyiz with their kids. Parents sometimes treat a child better than the other. When the Yusuf of the family starts getting treated better, everyone starts having a grudge against this Yusuf. This is what happens. They start holding things against this Yusuf. So Allah Azza wa Jalla has given you this example to be wary of this. So I don't fall down in this case. Even with the story of the dream, when Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam sees, where the king sees the dream and calls him in, and he explains to him that there will be a surplus in the harvest for 7 years, then there will be a famine in the 7 years. So he teaches you from the stories how someone prepares themselves for a famine or a drought by storing the grain and taking care of what they have, not to be wasteful. Because we live in a world that's very wasteful. I was at the school, I was at one of the high schools last week, and one young lad, he walked in and he had a manushi with him in his hand. You know, a manushi, what would you call it? An oregano or thyme pizza. I swear he had taken 2 bites from it. That's it. And it was still warm in his hand. Like you see, this guy just turns around, there's a bin, and he's about to throw it at us. I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going to throw it. I said, you're going to throw it in the bin. People don't realize this is what's telling you. That this that you have become zahid with, you have become so indifferent towards the blessing God has been giving you. Inshallah, the Sheikh will be talking about blessing in this month. That you that has become so indifferent to these blessings in this world that you live in, there is that day where the blessings are taken away. And then how will you react? So now that I have the blessings, how should I be dealing with them? And finally, and I find this the best part of the story of Nabi Yaqub and Yusuf, is when they are reunited. Because this is how life is. Life, you go through so many tragedies, calamities, catastrophes, and in the end there's that light at the end of the tunnel. Things always work out, but you have to always have hope in God. Nabi Yaqub never lost hope in Allah Azza wa Jal. Even if you take a look at when Zakaria does his dua, he says that I have never, when it comes to supplicating you or talking to Allah, come out as a shaqi, come out in a way where I have not had my prayers answered. So this is the best thing that you see. It gives you hope in these stories. Inshallah, over the following nights, we'll be looking at stories, and I'm not going to try and avoid looking at the whole story. I'm just taking a segment out of the stories. Sorry for tonight, I did prolong the fiqh. Usually it'll only be 5 minutes. But I found it imperative because I have not really slept that well last night because of this issue, because I've been answering phones. So I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to guide us on the righteous path and to make this month a blessed month upon us and our fasting being accepted in this month. For those that do believe that Shahr Ramadan is tomorrow, I recommend tonight that you read Dua Jawshan al-Kabir, because this is the dua that should be read on the first night of Shahr Ramadan al-Mubarak, and afterwards you read it on Layal al-Qadr. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.